Welcome back to the Pretty Healthy Family Podcast.
Welcome back.
All right, I ran across this survey, this scientific study from Precision Nutrition, and it's where I get a lot of the perspectives. I really like what they do in terms of their certifications, their education that they provide, because it's very practical.
And they do a lot of research
They
and
do
they
it.
back it up a ton.
Yeah, so I really like them as a company. It's where I received my certification, at least one of the certifications that I have.
They're
And,
always piling up.
yes, and there's always more that I want to take. But they ran this study and they've gone through hundreds of thousands of clients of their own, and they talked about nutrition challenges. And what were some of the nutrition challenges that many people face? And I was really surprised at what they came up with because it's not really what you think.
Yeah, I was surprised too
Yeah.
when you showed me this list.
So, what I'd like to do today is just go through some of these very typical nutrition challenges and get your perspective, and we'll kind of talk back and forth around what are ways to mitigate these challenges or get past these hurdles so all of our clients and all the people listening can reach their healthiest self.
All right, let's do it.
All right, so the first one is emotional and stress eating. And we talk about stress a lot, emotional eating a lot. You have your certification in the psychology of eating. So, how do you see stress eating, emotional eating as a challenge for our clients? Then, what are some good ways to move past it?
I think it is probably one of the biggest challenges for our clients. And obviously, the Precision Nutrition Report says that. But I think that one of the easiest ways to kind of really evaluate how much of an effect that it really has on your life is to make a few physical changes and see where you're at first. And then you can take it one step farther and see how much food really has an emotional pull on you. So something like most of our clients come to us and they're just not eating most of the day, and then they're eating in the evening, and then they're wondering why they can't help but eat, and they think that they're emotional eating, and they're not necessarily. So just by eating breakfast in the morning and eating satiating nutrients and having a proper lunch, that may completely negate that feeling of emotional eating entirely. And we actually see that happen quite a bit. So that's one way to start it.
Yeah, and another way I guess I see this occurring in a lot of the clients that I have is like I excel at my day job, my 9 to 5 job, the corporate job that I'm punching in the clock, and but that carries a certain amount of stress. I carry that stress home, and I kind of just want my home to be the area where I'm relaxing. I'm to use a phrase that many men don't use is let my hair down a little bit. But I want it to be that safe space, but that stress is still with me. And a way that I compensate for that stress is I eat because food does give us those endorphins. It makes us happy. It kind of calms some of that. It's a balance to some of that stress. So
And to an extent, it is normal
it is very
to
normal.
eat under those circumstances.
And when we're in that stressful state, we do crave the salts, the fats, the combination of fats and sugars and those type of things because those are the way our body normally reacts to stress. And we think about the food is the answer, and many times the food isn't the answer or alcohol isn't the answer. The answer is solving for the core stress problem, which could be work. And I can't say, well, the answer is quitting work, but maybe there's a 20-minute walk you can do twice a day while at work that can help alleviate a little bit of stress where you're not bringing your phone with you, you're not trying to check your emails or get back to somebody, but you're just allowing yourself a little bit of time to de-stress, which reduces the overall stress load when you get home and you're in that food environment
I
where
think that makes a huge impact on a lot of people just having that little walk. And I think for some people, their jobs or their lives are so stressful that maybe it is helpful to actually evaluate that whole situation and maybe not quit your job, but maybe it's delegating some of your workload or looking at a way you can organize it and become more efficient to just help lower that stress so the burden isn't as strong when you come home.
Hmm. And it's sounds simple, but even things like a to-do list, tracking your the things that you need to accomplish on some type of pen and paper helps alleviate some stress. I think back when like I was in high school or college and I had to study for a big exam, the first thing I would do is clean my room. And it's a way to procrastinate, but it's also that clean environment helps kind of calm my nerves and helps me mentally get ready for the task I want to accomplish. So we do strive in order. So a
Mm-hmm.
simple thing like just listing all the things that you need to do or dedicating time to I'm going to reply to emails just in the morning, once in the morning, once in the afternoon. Giving a little bit of order to your day may again help alleviate a little bit of stress, which then will carry home, and you don't put that stress into food or even some of the relationships you could be in.
I think that's a great tip. And also, when you do reach for those foods and you find yourself emotionally eating, I think it's really helpful to allow yourself to have the food and then just eat it slowly. So take the time to actually chew it, to be present with your food, to smell it, to enjoy it, because slowing down helps your body de-stress. When you eat quickly, it increases your cortisol levels, increases the stress on your body, and your brain doesn't get that reward sensation from eating the food in the way that it would if you were to just slow down. So just by chewing your food and being present, you are more likely to eat less of it and have less guilt after the fact.
Yeah, and I really like this idea of slowing down while you're eating to fix or at least address the emotional aspect of eating because when I'm slowing down, I can kind of take that overview of where am I at? What am I actually trying to solve for? And one of the other things I heard from precision nutrition, which I thought was a great perspective, is every action that we have is really our answer to a core feeling or a core desire. So
Mm-hmm.
we eat because we're hungry. The core desire is I need to solve for hunger, so I take this action. And maybe it's not hunger, maybe it's stress that we're solving for, and we eat as a result of that. But slowing down allows us to take stock of what do I really want out of the next 10 minutes? What do I really want out of the next hour? And eating sometimes allows us to gain that awareness and say, maybe the food wasn't it. So I'm going to call a friend. I'm going to connect with my significant other, or I'm just really stressed. I need to unwind in front of the TV, and that's okay too sometimes.
And to expand on that, sometimes asking yourself before you go and you actually reach the foods and just saying, okay, what am I feeling in this moment? Why am I actually reaching for these foods? What is going on in my emotions? Is it stress? Is it boredom? What's causing me to reach for these foods? And then after the fact, just take a step back and say, okay, now how am I feeling? Am I guilty? Am I anxious? Am I okay about it? And just like you said, creating that awareness around what you're eating and why you're doing it can make a significant impact on reducing the times that you do it in the future.
Yeah, and I think this speaks to a much larger issue that we tend to see with the narrative in the health and fitness industry. We often point to calories, workouts. These are the things that you need to dial in to be successful. And what we're seeing in the first 5 minutes of this podcast is so much of it is how you're feeling, how much stress you have in your life, and how you're you're seeing the world. Your perspective on the world will result in the fewer calories, the better workouts, all that thing. So it's a mental journey as much as a physical journey.
It's so much easier to just turn a blind eye and try to dot all your I's and cross all your T's and cut your calories and increase your workouts than it is to actually deal with what's going on in your head.
Yeah, and that's where you see 90, 95,
Mm-hmm.
99% of diets fail is because they took it as dotting the I's, crossing the T's, instead of taking that mental journey of, I just need to look at life a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so the next one we have is lack of planning. And I know for us, we've gotten back into the idea of meal planning and preparing because I feel like life is getting a little bit busier these days.
Yes.
The company, the business is growing, which is great. Beckett, our toddler, he's becoming a lot more active
A lot
and
more
needs a
social.
lot more social,
All
needs a
these
lot more
play dates.
attention. So that limits the amount of time we have during the week, which results in we still have a goal of eating healthy and reaching our best healthy self. So we need to do a little bit more planning on the front end. So
Mhm.
what are some ways that someone can easily plan on the front end to solve for lack of planning during the week?
I think the first and most important thing that pretty much most people need to do that are already struggling with this is to physically take out your calendar, your phone, or your actual paper notebook and go ahead and schedule time to meal prep.
Hmm.
Like whatever happens, just schedule that in your calendar. That way it's non-negotiable and you show up every single week or twice a week or whatever it is that you decide to do. So for us, what we found that works recently is meal prepping on Sundays. So I tackle the protein, he tackles the sides, and we come up with enough meals for at least Monday through Thursday lunches, and we're covered.
Yeah, and I think we need to gain some perspective on that. It's I'm cooking or you're cooking the proteins.
Mm-hmm.
I'm cooking like black beans, rice, sweet potatoes, very basic stuff. But the like the maybe the non-starchy vegetables or the accessories like the fats and things like that, which really give a meal the flavor,
Mm-hmm.
that's still a day-to-day thing that you add in last minute. But there's core elements of every meal that you can switch in and out and make every meal great. But they're just core elements like sweet potatoes, like your carbs, your
Mm-hmm.
proteins, and certain things. I have about 18 different combinations I can create with the meal prepping that we do. So it's not that we're having the exact same meal every
Mm-hmm.
day. We're just trying to get what are some of the basic building blocks of nutrition that's a healthy life for us. Can I cook some of that on the front end?
Yeah. So for this past week, for example, we cooked some chicken and some burgers. And when I was in a rush one week, I just threw it on some greens
Hmm.
and had it with a salad dressing. And then another time I had some more time. So I turned it into a chicken salad with a mayonnaise type of mix. And then another day I had it a sandwich in between rice cakes with some tomato and some lettuce. That was another quick win. So we're still eating variety every day, but those staples help us get through the week without regardless of how busy we are.
Yeah, and so how long does it take for you to cook your proteins?
I suppose as long as it takes for me to stir it up and that by that time the grill is heated up and then I set it on the grill.
Is it over
So-
an hour, you think,
oh
or
no.
probably not even close?
Probably half an hour, but I'm only actually spending 5 to 7 minutes
Yeah.
on the front end. The rest of it, it's cooking.
So even if we round up half an hour to an hour for you to cook your proteins, for me, half an hour to cook the carbohydrates that we end up bulking. So total cook time is between half an hour and an hour.
Hmm.
That saves us a half an hour to an hour every single day.
Yeah.
So when we think about, well, I don't have time to meal prep, I don't have time to do that stuff on the front end, we're saving ourselves a half an hour almost every single day by using that 1/2 hour to an hour during the Sunday,
Hmm.
which right now football season's over, so I have a little bit more bandwidth because I do like to watch football, but even when I'm watching football, I have the time that we have the TV that's very visible from the kitchen. So I don't really have too much of an excuse.
And to back up a little bit, it can be really helpful like to choose your recipes in advance if you're someone who likes to follow an outline of
Mhm.
things to make. So if you start saving those throughout the week, you can start saving them on your phone, like on Instagram, and then you can create a little list of what ingredients you need from the grocery store. And we do that on Saturday. So we do all our shopping on Saturday, and Sunday is our meal prep. Um, yeah, so that can be really helpful. And then if you have something like our app, we have a meal plan that we give, and you can automatically add ingredients to a cart and it generates a shopping list for you. So that even makes it easier.
Yeah, and another useful tip if you're saying, I don't even have a clue what to eat and what I can meal prep for, because many times I like to meal prep and then it goes bad because I just don't eat that kind of stuff. That's what, again, I'd say cook basic things that you know you're going to eat every day,
That you know
and
you
then
like.
create your flavor in the moment, like whatever you're feeling like in that moment. Um, but what I like to tell my clients is go onto something like a MyFitnessPal, create your perfect day of eating,
Mm.
and not perfect, but more ideal and realistic day of eating, and leave a little bit of room for maybe a little bit of flavor here, like olive oil or maybe some peppers or something like that. But create the basic structure where you know you're getting in your protein, you know you're around your calorie goal, and is that something you can create a meal plan around or a meal prep around? Is that something you can see yourself eating multiple times a week? And that's going to be your breakfast, your lunches, your dinner, any type of snacks. Because again, with the snacks, I'm prepping overnight oats every Sunday as well. So I go into MyFitnessPal, I log all the stuff, and that creates the basic structure and highlights, okay, I need to meal prep these foods.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's also a helpful tip to know what foods you want to meal prep for in the coming week.
Absolutely.
And the next nutritional challenge is cravings. Just I think feel like especially with the first one that we tackled, which was emotional and stress eating that often leads to craving, and you talked about skipping breakfast is probably going to lead to a craving later on.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. That's hands down one of the first reasons why we have cravings is because we are not filling ourselves up, our bodies with the fuel that it needs. And when we don't do that, our body says, okay, I need fuel, I'm hungry, and it sends out signals. And those are in turn become cravings, and we want to eat those. So the more we can fuel ourselves and have eat a satiating meal, including fiber and protein, the less likely we are to have cravings later. And another thing that can contribute to cravings are when we eat highly palatable foods consistently because our gut literally starts to crave more of those foods in a sense.
Yeah, and one way to help curb those cravings, like you said, is having more protein in your meals, and also to curb the highly palatable factor is to have more like non-starchy vegetables.
That's
The,
the fiber.
yeah, the fiber is going to help you stay full longer, and it also just creates a bigger meal. If I have a lot of non-starchy vegetables, a lot of fibers or so in my meal, it's a pretty big plate. And when it's that pretty big plate, it's going to make me feel like I'm eating a lot, which then carries into I don't feel as hungry an hour, 2 hour, 3 hours from now.
Mm-hmm.
So the best way to curb cravings is to nail the meals that you're already having.
Mm-hmm.
And I know people love to I don't eat breakfast because I don't have time, but solving for that issue of having sustained energy because of your meals earlier in the day helps curb the cravings later in the day.
A lot of people will say that as soon as they finish their meal, they want something sweet or they're craving something right away. If that is you, then chances are you did not eat enough protein during your meal or maybe you didn't eat enough fiber or both because you should be feeling pretty satiated after each and every meal.
Yeah. So what about those cravings that we have that just kind of come out of the blue, or we just need that ice cream. Like I just really need the ice cream. We haven't had it for like a month or so. I know we both go through these phases of I have this craving. What's actually going on there? And how do we solve for that? And is it bad to just submit to the craving and go to the store and get all that?
I don't think that there's a problem with that at all. I think that's just a part of life and enjoying it. That's the balance. That's the pretty healthy part. So I say go for it. The only problem therein lies if it's every single weekend. So I would say, by all means, you want that ice cream once a month, every couple of months, or whatever. Go enjoy the ice cream and don't bother tracking it. Now, if you're having that ice cream every single weekend, yeah, you probably want to track that into your meal plan because it's probably going to set you back from reaching your goals and you need to be aware of that. So there's nothing wrong with even having it every single weekend. It's just to be conscious of how much you're having and how it's affecting how much you're eating. But if it's just every once in a while, there's probably not even any need to track it and just enjoy it. That's a part of life.
Yeah. Yeah, and as long as you're still using some of the other metrics like the scale, progress photos,
Hmm.
measurements, you'll know if that ice cream or that craving is curbing your ability to reach your goals. So, as long as we're still aware of some of those other metrics that we probably all should be tracking, you'll know if that ice cream or submitting to that craving is a larger issue that you need to address.
Right.
Yeah. So the next one, number 4, it was snacking when not hungry. And again, I feel like this goes back to emotional stress eating, not going in, not having the meals being satiating enough.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like it just ties in together with everything we just said. It's not eating enough protein and fiber, not having breakfast, thinking that coffee is your breakfast. Those things are going to lead to more snacking. So chances are you are probably are just not satiated if you're snacking when you're not hungry, or there's an emotional response, in which case go back to our point one, listen to what we talked about there, and trying to really understand and wrap your brain around what's going on in your head and why you're reaching for these foods.
Yeah, again, I agree 100%. It's so much of snacking when not hungry is you trying to solve for an emotion or a feeling. And when we take a step back and look at the big picture, the action doesn't line up with the proper response
Hmm.
for that emotion. If I'm bored, eating isn't a good answer. It's going for a walk, doing something exciting, like trying to
Calling
solve for
friends.
that core feeling. There's a lot of really good solutions to that problem, and eating usually isn't one of them because you're not really I'm not emotionally fulfilled after eating in the same way I am when I call a friend
Hmm.
or I do something like that. All right, the last one on the top 5 for nutrition challenges was eating quickly. And you talked about this one, just eating a little bit more slowly can help you wrap your head around what's going on, help you feel that you have a better control of your emotions. Are there any tips for eating
Hmm.
quickly?
Yeah, it even helps your digestion, which I don't think people realize. Eating quickly can cause a lot of stress in your digestion, which can in turn cause like bloating and discomfort and things like that. So it is really helpful to eat slowly as much as possible. And yeah, there are little tips and tricks that you can do to help slow down. And honestly, I think this is probably personally my biggest nutrition challenge, especially with a kid running around. Like I just find myself inhaling my food sometimes, I feel like. But some things that help are just little tips like putting your fork or your spoon down while in between bites. It's maybe counting bites for some people. It's taking 3 to 5 deep breaths before your meal, or maybe occasionally in between each bite. And another thing that I think is extremely helpful for most people is to reduce, if not eliminate, all distractions. So if you're eating in front of a TV, chances are you're going to inhale your food because you're not being present with your food. So when you take the time to be present with your food, to smell it, to really savor the flavor, you're more likely to slow down. So turn off the TV, leave the books, be present with your family or your company. Don't work in front of your computer, stay off your phone, and just be present with your food and your company, and you're far more likely to eat slower in the end.
Yeah, I love all that. And if the problem is eating quickly, I do see how having the TV on, things like that, become a distraction. And I just tend to eat a little bit quicker. And a study I saw, which really I feel like is one of those unconscious things, kind of like the TV, and I'm eating too quickly because I'm watching TV. They did this study where they had 3 different environments. One environment was no music on, one environment was a faster pace style of music, and one was a slow style of music. So they had the people eat as normal, and what they found is the people who had a faster paced style of music, they ate the quickest. I don't think that's like a surprise to anyone.
No.
In second was no music at all. And I think it goes to I don't want to be present with my thoughts. I'm bored, so I just tend to let's get this over with.
Hmm.
The slowest pace for eating was in the environment with a slow music. So it goes back to just creating a very pleasant environment. And I'm not saying it needs to be light jazz, break out the candles, and all this type of thing.
Although I'm pretty sure we've listened to a lot of light jazz during dinner since you read that study.
I know because like I feel like for me eating quickly is an issue, and I think it goes back to the days when we would have a glass of wine and maybe a candle was lit where we had some light jazz because there is an emotional connection we're trying to establish, especially with our busy lives, that we want to work on our relationship. And that type of environment is a better environment for our relationship than like dubstep and a smoke machine.
It makes total sense when you put it in that perspective.
Yeah. All right, so those were the top 5 nutrition challenges. And so I wanted to go into what were some of them that weren't in the top 5, which were kind of surprising. So that society usually says these are the actual problems that people have. But when you ask other people, the people who are actually doing the work, they say, no, that wasn't it. So what are the ones that were low on the list that were surprising? And number 1 was didn't know what to eat, which essentially signals most people have a good idea of what they want to eat. The problem isn't not knowing what to eat. It's again, it's the emotional stress eating of when I'm stressed, I eat these things. I know it's not right, but I'm stressed out and I have to solve for that.
Even the person who like wants to get down to like all the little details, like is this superfood better than this superfood, or is kale better than romaine? Even that person ultimately knows what to eat because both of these foods are better than the French fries over here, and people do actually know that, it turns out.
Yeah, we all know like the kale's better than the donut. Like in every single study that I've ever done or asked anybody, like, do you generally have a good idea? And they'll nitpick the spinach versus the kale and things like that. And if they're asking those questions, you know they have they're gonna know 99% of what we, and that's kind of goes into a little bit of what we try to teach at Pretty Healthy Family is we're gonna give you some great education as you become our client and as you go through our program. But we realize the education is something you can probably get anywhere. Where our true value is understanding the emotional side, the stress eating side, to help you and the education you already have to be better at that.
Yeah.
Like, you need to move your body. You know generally the right foods to have. So can I take those emotional hurdles out of the way? Can I take those stress hurdles out of the way? And that's my job as a coach. And that's where I feel like the real value of the Pretty Healthy coaching comes in. The number 2 item on here was I don't know how to cook or I don't like cooking.
This one surprised me.
This one also surprised me. But I think it goes to we have just so many options these days. Like if I want to meal prep, I can also just go to Chipotle, get catering, and meal prep is solved. And there's so many companies out there who do meal prep for me and have made cooking really, really easy.
I have a few clients who order their meals and have them delivered to their home so that they're always hitting their macros during the week quite easily.
Yeah. So, and really when it comes down to the basics, very minimally processed foods, I understand how to cook that kind of stuff. It's more the heavily processed foods and how to, if I just put sugar in something, I can make anything taste great. That type of thing does get a little bit more complicated, but when you're talking about the basics of cooking is pretty easy.
And anything you make at home is going to be healthier than you can get out.
Yeah. The next 2 are pretty similar, but we'll tackle them one at a time. Number 3 was family or peer pressure. And this is something that I'm very surprised wasn't higher on the list, that we think about if I want to eat a certain way, I don't project that on you, where I have to have my meal and then you have your meal.
I actually think that this is more relevant based on where you're at in your life, because this is something that really impacted me when I first started my health journey. My friends and I, we went out drinking all the time. We ate a bunch of junk food. And when I decided that I wanted to eat healthy, I think they felt a little threatened by that because I was doing what they wished they could do. And I got a lot of pushback, and it made it really hard for me in the beginning. So I think that maybe it's low on the list because it applies to such a small niche of people at a certain time of their life.
Yeah, and maybe they're just so committed to this weight loss where they just don't factor that kind of stuff in. And maybe the clientele is more on the single side, or they're doing it with their significant other. So who knows? Either way, I'll say this from experience. You're never going to convince your significant other, or whomever to eat healthy by telling them they should eat healthy.
It doesn't work like
It's
that.
worked 0% of the time. The best way to show other people or to get other people to eat healthy and to get them on board with what you're doing is to be a great example.
Yeah.
And to show people that eating healthy can still be fun. I can still have great meals. So if you're showing them just your chicken, broccoli, and rice every day, you're not being a great example.
You're not doing yourself any favors.
You're not doing yourself any favors, and no one's coming to your side. I don't care how ripped you are. But having healthier meals and enjoying the process where you're showing, I have energy to do all these things, but not bragging about it, that's not going to help anybody. Just lead by example, have a little humility, and they'll come over when they're ready.
Yeah.
And the last one was an unsupportive environment. I think this goes back to the family, the peer pressure. And you talked about how sometimes people, when they see you becoming healthier, they kind of wish they did that on their own. Maybe they just didn't have the internal motivation to do it on their own or branch out from their friend group. But many times we find they're still supportive of what you're trying to do. And maybe over time they join you.
Yeah. And if they are a good friend, they will be supportive and they will come around quite quickly if they aren't initially quite there.
Yeah. One of the things that I think results in this being something that's low on the list is I don't feel like we truly grasp how our environment largely shapes what we do. We think it's really on us. We think so much of our health journey, I have the choice, I can make certain decisions, but we don't understand how unconsciously there's choices being pushed on us all the time. You look at your social media feed and there's just so many things that you need to be doing this, you need to be doing that, you need to be doing this. Look at me, this is my highlight reel. It's just continually just flooded with information, but that's registering in our head. That's part of our environment. And what I feel like people don't recognize is that largely influences your actions. And we have to factor that kind of stuff into our environment too. And many times that isn't a supportive environment. And a way to help solve for the environment issue is to maybe unfollow certain people and maybe curate your feed for the goals that you have.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip.
All right. And so the last subject that they had in there was what gets in the way of people working out? So what did they think gets in the way of them achieving their health goals in terms of fitness? And number one was demands of daily life. And we talked about how meal prep has become a little bit larger of a priority for us because during the week, we're much busier. And that seems to be a common thing with a lot of people out there.
Absolutely.
So how do you solve for the demands of daily life? How do you solve for the working mom when she hears you need to be up at 5 a.m. and you need to work out an hour and a half before your kid gets up and make sure your kid goes to the best school, in addition to making them the perfect lunch, perfect breakfast, and do everything, by the way, you're only getting 4 hours of sleep?
I think one of the biggest things that will help with this is setting realistic expectations for yourself. So if you are that busy mom, and I definitely was that busy mom, like postpartum, like starting a business and everything, it's maybe just saying, okay, what can I commit to? I can commit to 3 15-minute sessions a week, and that's all I got. And that's literally taking a calendar and putting it in your calendar and saying, I'm showing up for those 3 15 minutes every single week, that is my non-negotiable, because that's something you can follow through with. Chances are you might end up doing more, and that's great. And if not, that's okay, because you are building a habit. You are creating consistency within your life, and you are more likely to be consistent in the long run, which is what's going to get you results. Because if you just say, okay, I'm going to work out this week, I'm going to show up for an hour 3 times a week, but you don't have an hour to commit, then you're going to end up going really hard for 3, maybe 4 weeks, maybe even a couple, 3, 4 months. And then you're going to stop completely. And then where are you?
Yeah, you're going to burn out.
You're going to completely burn out and quit, throw in the towel, and you're not going to see any progress. But if you were to have shown up for 15 minutes 3 times a week for a whole year, that now you're going to see some progress.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with this one, because we often, and the people who really come to us, they've tried every single diet out there. They've tried every single workout program out there. And it's almost as if they were jumping into the deep end of health and fitness when they haven't thought about what is like the low end. Where can I just dip my toe into the water of health and fitness, be comfortable with that, and then maybe take that first step, maybe take the second step. It is about that slow progression of building habits, creating an environment that works for you, and then constantly making progress. Because again, we as coaches want to work ourselves out of a job. We want to create a sustainable lifestyle for you as a client. And that's going to be completed with small steps that's sustainable, where you can really wrap your head around it and it's not adding stress to your life. And jumping into the deep end will always add stress to your life.
Always.
So I love the 3 days a week, 15 minutes. Call it a win for the week. And that is a win. And that could be a month, 2 months, 6 months of just the 3 15-minute workouts.
That's okay.
That's okay.
Because you're consistent.
You're consistent, and you're going to see really good progress with that. But what's even better is you're going to then create a workout that I can go 20 minutes, I can go to 30, but it starts with the 15 minutes. It starts with the 10 minutes. Time management, so, was the number 2 thing that gets in the way. And touching on what you just said, it's small steps over time. So if maybe you're not the working mom, maybe you're the corporate warrior who's going 9 to 5, and this may mean you're getting up at 5, 6 in the morning, you're going to the gym earlier in the morning, getting to work, coming home, and then you have the rest of the day with your kids. But that also means you're probably going to bed a little bit earlier, so you're not watching the late show with whoever is the late show host these days. But you're going to bed a little bit early to make sure you can get up in the morning and be successful, or you're doing it in the afternoon, or maybe try to squeeze it into work.
Yeah, and I think that the time management, the important aspect is making it a non-negotiable, and again, putting it in your calendar. So whatever you decide is going to work for you, that is realistic, it's actually putting it in your calendar and showing up for yourself time and time again.
Yeah, and they say what gets put in your schedule gets done, and giving a little bit of buffer room around that. And as long as, again, you're doing it very slowly with, like you say, 3 workouts a week, that's not going to be too overwhelming to your overall calendar, where you're not getting other things done as well.
And maybe that means you're using the crappy gym at your work to get it in, but that's okay. Or maybe it means that you need to work out at home, and you need to set up that environment at home because time is such an issue. So you need to invest in just a few heavy dumbbells or equipment to work out from home, because that extra time to drive to and from the gym, it isn't working with your schedule. So it's figuring out what works for you, what can you show up for, what can you be consistent with over time again.
Yeah, it really comes back to consistency. And the third one on here is motivation. And I like to think about motivation in the same way I think about going to that 9 to 5 job. I'm never motivated to go to my 9 to 5 job, but I do it every day, or every day I'm supposed to be there. And I'm not motivated, but I do it because it's part of the person that I want to be. My ideal version of the husband that I want to be, the parent that I want to be, has the job. I go to the job. I'm not motivated, but it's what I do to reach that ideal self, to be the provider that I want to be the husband, the parent that I want to be. Same thing goes with working out. There are days I don't want to work out, but I go because that's part of that overall umbrella of characteristics that fulfill the person that I want to become.
Yeah, I think that people often think, and I used to be one of these people, that you should be motivated to go to the gym. And you look at all these fitness influencers and all these people online, and you think, oh, I wish I had their motivation to show up and be consistent all the day, all the time. But newsflash, these fitness influencers or whoever you're looking at, chances are they're not feeling motivated every day. I myself sit in my car sometimes for 10, 15 minutes in the gym before I go in because I'm not motivated to go in, but I show up because it's something that I have created a habit of doing. And I believe that it's discipline is the reason I show up. And discipline is a muscle that you create over time. And you start with those little habits, like we said, and they build and they build and they build. And then as you become more disciplined, you just show up. Mm-hmm. It's not really a matter of being motivated. Some days you're going to be more motivated than others. And I believe that as you become more disciplined, the motivation does become more frequent because you start to get more excited about your lifts, being able to lift a little heavier. Maybe you're a runner, being able to run a little farther easier, and PRs and things like that. So you start to develop that discipline muscle, which in turn turns into motivation in time. But it's not something you're not going to be motivated and then just go work out first.
Yeah. And the last thing I hate here about motivation, I don't feel like people talk about this very much. And again, I'm going to relate it back to work. When I'm really at my wit's end and I'm frustrated with work and I'm not motivated to go to work, I take a vacation. It's the same thing with working out.
Yes.
If you're not motivated, maybe you need a deload week. Maybe you need to take a break from working out. Maybe it's not the right workout for you. You should enjoy your workout. So if you're not motivated, you really have to question, why am I doing this high intensity thing? I hate high intensity workouts. Just maybe do the slow strength stuff or go for a walk or go for a run. Something that's a little bit more exciting for you, or take a week off. So if you're truly not motivated, think about it the same way you would do many other things, in that my mental state isn't ready for this. So what is something that does excite me? And then do that.
Yeah, I think that is such a good point. And I know we harp on strength training all the time because it's the best way to shape your body and it has so many health benefits. But if you hate strength training, if it makes you cringe and you just like really don't want to do it, then like you said, find something you enjoy. Do that first. Let that become such a habit in your life. And then, okay, maybe you're going to have to do something you don't want to do as much to get you closer to your goals. But that thing that you loved will have become such a part of your life that you are feeling more motivated to do the thing that you don't want to do, to continue to get you closer to your goals in time. But you don't have to start there, and you don't even have to look for that to start happening right away. Just do something you enjoy.
Yeah, and I love the perspective you have there, because let's just say I get really excited about running. We know that to be a better runner, eventually strength training is going to be incorporated into that. Mm-hmm. Or to be a better strength athlete, I need to incorporate some cardio. So at a certain point, when you mature as an athlete, mature as a person in the gym, you're going to dive into some of these other things. We all end up in the same place, which is trying to be a very well-rounded athlete. So find whatever door works for you, walk through that door, and eventually we'll end up in the same place.
Exactly.
Okay. And so essentially that was the overall survey that Precision Nutrition had. And I feel like it really highlighted the client's perspective very well in terms of what are their actual challenges and how can we move past them. And I feel like that's much more helpful than just saying it's all about calories. It's calories in versus calories out. You need to strength train 3 to 4 days a week, which are all true. But I feel like it doesn't really hit what the actual problem is.
Yeah. I think this was a very beneficial conversation for a lot of people.
Yeah. Any other closing thoughts?
No, I think that's good.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.